It's almost inexcusable if Penn State does not dominate UCLA.
You are Locked On Nittany Lions, your daily podcast on the Penn State Nittany Lions. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
You are locked on to Penn State football, and as always, thank you so much for making Locked On Nittany Lions your first listen and watch every single day. My name is Seyko, and I am your host of the show, credentialed media member for both Penn State football and Penn State wrestling. Final Penn State versus UCLA preview. Score predictions, stat predictions, what to expect when UCLA has the football, and how they're going to try to stop the Nittany Lions. Can Penn State dominate in this one? I'm talking about both sides of the football, offense and defense, but particularly the spotlight is going to be on the offense because the defense has been the furthest thing from the issue. We need to see efficiency. We need to see this offense. There's two parts to this because Penn State's offense needs to make a statement, and I want to see this offensive group, continue to build some chemistry here. The offensive line just hasn't looked in sync. The ground game, well, Kaytron Allen's looked very good. But Nicholas Singleton, this is a get-right game for Kaytron Allen and Nicholas Singleton, the run game in general. Drew Allar needs to look like he's having fun playing football again, right? I think of the West Virginia game where Penn State goes on the road and they're just able to move the football at will. That's kind of what I'm expecting here from Penn State in terms of what goals should they have. I don't think it's going to look exactly like that, but I do think because of the nature of this matchup, Penn State should be able to move the football, but you also have to be conscious of, it is a cross-country trip. You did lose Tony Rojas for potentially the remainder of the season. It's a long-term injury, no confirmation, but that's what I'm expecting when it comes to Rojas's availability moving forward. So Penn State's offense needs to play and continue to build chemistry, especially in the passing game with Trevor Pena, Devontae Ross, capitalize on Ross's performance against Oregon. But Kyron Hudson has been non-existent since the Nevada game. It's been tough getting Trevor Pena involved in these games. And that should be Drew Allar's favorite go-to right there, is Trevor Pena out of the slot. However, you don't want any injuries. And I'm not saying if Penn State plays a full game on offense that injuries are going to happen. But this is a game where, you want to have the starters play their best ball. You also got to get some of the backups into the game, okay? This is a game to continue to build out depth. Penn State should not struggle with UCLA. It is almost inexcusable to a point. To a point, I say, because it is the cross-country trip. That is a demoralizing loss against Oregon. I'm really intrigued to see where Penn State is going to be from their mentality. That part of it. Are they going to have a slow start? That's very much on the table. I would not be surprised about that. Do not be surprised if Penn State has a slow start in the first quarter, and then as they settle in the second and third quarter, and then hopefully have their starters out by the fourth quarter. That is what Penn State should be aiming for. Okay, because UCLA is still going to try to play ball. They're just going to play. They're going to try to play spoiler. I mean, this team looks completely different. Bruins fire their head coach. They change coordinators. The offense is going to look somewhat different. It's going to be a little more pass-friendly from what we've gathered here. But there's really not a whole lot they can do. We'll talk about UCLA a little more in the second segment here. But Penn State's game plan is going to be getting back to fundamentals. Run the football first and foremost. Don't get behind the sticks. Use play action. You have Kaytron Allen and Nicholas Singleton, and supposedly one of the better offensive lines in the entire country. Get back to basics. UCLA's run defense is one of the worst in the nation. Almost 1,000 yards rushing in 4 games, 931 to be exact, on 174 carries. That is almost 5.5 yards per carry through those 4 games. This is supposed to be a run-first team. You have Kaytron Allen. You have Nicholas Singleton. There is no excuse. But it's about getting Drew Allar into rhythm, too. You have to focus on the balance because all the criticism is about, well, Drew Allar doesn't fit in the system. Okay, prove that he does, right? If you're telling me that this offense is for Drew Allar, it's pro style. They're a pro style. It's a multiple offense. Andy Kotelnicki's offense is a multiple offense with elements of pro style and RPO incorporated. But the criticism from just about almost everybody is that Drew Allar doesn't fit into the system. So you got to show that he does. Because if Penn State struggles with UCLA, I will give a grace period for Penn State's offense in half of the first quarter. If they struggle right out of the gate, that is understandable because of the long trip, and they're human. That Oregon game was somewhat of a playoff game. That was one of the biggest games on the schedule, obviously, right? I don't have to say that. I don't have to point that out. But to expect Penn State to just throw it away, just recycle it out of their minds, they're human. Okay? I would fully expect them to honestly have that game linger slightly. But then if they don't settle in going into the second quarter, if this game isn't out of reach by the time the fourth quarter arrives, then I still have questions, major questions. So the battle's won in the trenches. UCLA on both sides of the football does not offer any sort of protection or resistance on the offensive line and defensive line, respectively. You should be able to run the football for 6-7 yards at a time with Kaytron Allen and Nicholas Singleton. I am primarily focused on the ground game. I want to see that dynamic duo in the backfield get right in this game. And I know Kaytron Allen's had a phenomenal start to the season. He is the player that I'm going to look to and say that he's going to continue to have that strong start. And maybe we get a breakout run from Nicholas Singleton, right? One of those classic 50, 60, 70-yard touchdown runs. It's just about getting back to fundamentals. But I want to start with the run game first because that's what Penn State's going to lean on for a majority of the season. You still got to work in Drew Allar, getting chemistry built with Trevor Pena and Kyron Hudson, because you have to keep focusing on it, or else it's going to become a liability down later on in the season as opposed to a strength. As far as the defense goes, Tony Rojas being unavailable for this game, and again for the remainder of the season as we expect here, that's not going to make or break Penn State's defense in this kind of matchup here. They should be able to get after Nico Iamaleava with 4 pass rushers. Denied Dennis Sutton is better than 3 offensive linemen. If they triple team him, I still think DDS is going to win that matchup. Zariah Fisher, Chaz Coleman could have another breakout performance as a true freshman. Zane Durant, I feel like Zane Durant should be highlighted here because he comes into question now. I go to bat for him and say, hey, this guy's a preseason first-team All-American, and he's really been humbled these first few games. I think part of it has to do with a little bit of the scheme fit here because he's the focal point of opposing offenses. He's taken on double teams. This is a different setup for Zane Durant. So if you're wondering how did Zane Durant take a step backwards? Because this is a different defense for him. So I wonder if Jim Knowles is going to find ways to open up plays for him to make an impact on the defensive side of the football. Linebackers are going to come into question as well. How does Dom DeLuca perform? Do we see Keon Wiley, Anthony Specca, Alex Tatch, the freshman that most people are talking about at this given time? The secondary, they're going to have to be ready for the quick game from UCLA, which I will highlight in the upcoming segment here. But that's what to expect from Penn State's defense. The defensive line should have no issues. I want to see what linebacker, aside from Amari Campbell, steps up in this given moment. And then the secondary should be able to, they're going to run a lot of press coverage. So UCLA is going to have to get the football out quick if they want to move at all. Let's talk about the Bruins because they fired Deshaun Foster. They changed coordinators. Recruiting's falling apart. Is this team going to be even ready to show up on Saturday in the Rose Bowl? Well, we're going to talk about it coming up next here on Locked On Nittany Lions. And this episode is brought to you by Mazda's moving the game forward. For those who believe it's not just about playing the game, it's about redefining it. There are moments that do more than put points on the board. They move crowds, they move culture, and keep moving the game forward. Now, Penn State didn't beat Oregon, but one player that definitely kept the game moving forward was Devontae Ross. Ross had not one, but 2 touchdowns to help tie the game and send it into double overtime for that thrilling finish in the whiteout game. It's players like Devontae Ross who keep the game moving forward. And when you follow what moves you, the unexpected is only the beginning. And just like there's more to every highlight, there's more to a Mazda vehicle. Mazda, move and be moved. And today's episode is brought to you by DoorDash. It's almost the weekend, time to look back and crown this week's MVP on who delivered. Powered by DoorDash. Just like you can win every Saturday with DoorDash Streaks, saving more every time you order, these players delivered when it mattered most. Let's break it down. For Penn State, I'm going with Amari Campbell. He delivered in a big way. Defensively, Penn State was phenomenal. And it was because of players like Amari Campbell. Campbell had 15 tackles. He has 37 on the season. He delivered for the Penn State defense. No hesitation, no delay. And if you've been watching week after week, you know this performance was not a fluke. And just like Campbell delivered for Penn State, DoorDash delivers your Saturdays. With DoorDash Streaks, you save every Saturday you order. Stack it up all season. You could save up to $250, including $100 in DoorDash credits. Order this Saturday. Keep the streak alive and fuel your game day only with DoorDash. Terms apply. Promo period through November 18th. The biggest offseason headline, or at least one of them, was Nico Iamaleava joining UCLA, holding out at Tennessee, and then moving over to UCLA. And it is not exactly, I don't know that everybody thought that, hey, they're going to clean house, they're going to start over, everything like that. But we knew collectively this was a bad move and it was not going to work. Did we think it was going to be 0-4, losses to UNLV and New Mexico? Honestly, I look back at that and I said, you know what? I'm not totally sold on UCLA performing well against some of these other teams. And of course, lo and behold, they have no wins to start the season. They changed coordinators. Here's the first thing that I want to point out about UCLA. They are going with Jerry Neuheisel, who's calling his first game. And this has been at least the analysis, the insiders at UCLA are saying that this should be a more QB-friendly attack. That the offensive line isn't going to have to hold up in protection. It is going to be QB friendly. Quick passes, screens, some more motion. And there's 2 parts to this. Penn State doesn't have any footage of this. Penn State does not have any film to say, okay, this is what we're expecting. You can anticipate it. You can read the reports and try to predict what UCLA is going to do, but you really don't have a lot of footage to go off of. Nico Iamaleava is a mobile quarterback. Is he a true dual threat? Dude can run. He's not a running first quarterback. Let me tell you that. At least he's not supposed to be. But because the offensive line has been so atrocious for UCLA that he's had to. But now I would be aware of that. If I'm Penn State's defense, people made their quips when I said that Dante Moore, you should consider putting a QB spy on him. You really should consider putting a QB spy on Iamaleava because he's a lot faster and a lot quicker than Dante Moore. So he is more effective with his legs. And if the reports are saying that, hey, the offensive line's not so great, Iamaleava's already running for his life as it is. Why don't we design some quarterback runs? Why don't we design some option keepers? It is going to be important for Fisher, Dennis Sutton, Chaz Coleman, if and when he's out there. I would like to see Chaz Coleman a lot in this game. And that goes for Jalen Harvey as well. I know Malachi Williams has been banged up, so what's his availability for this game? But it's the defensive ends that honestly might be tested the most. I say that they're going to have the biggest impact when I'm talking about Penn State, but they're also going to have the biggest test too with some of these new wrinkles within UCLA's offense. So they don't really run the football effectively. Iamaleava, as much as it is, I would say that it's easy to critique him and to say that he's the reason that UCLA fell apart. It's systemic, okay? At the end of the day, That's not a well-managed football program. Deshaun Foster was set up to fail. Iamaleava is going to be, he's going to be an easy scapegoat from the outside, but I don't put it on him. I think he's a talented player. If he continues to treat this season as basically a moment for practice to refine his skills and take this as an opportunity of reflection to go and reset and then go into another program and hopefully help them. Kind of like, I mean, Dante Moore was in a similar setup where it wasn't working at UCLA. Everybody wrote him off. And then now at Oregon, he's considered one of the best quarterbacks in the country, if not the best quarterback in the country. I'm not saying Iamaleava is going to be the Heisman favorite next season, but you could treat it like so, where this is a learning moment. And in that moment where you have nothing to lose, you just go out there and ball. Okay, you just go out there and ball if you're Iamaleava. This is who he's going to get the football to. Quasi Gilmer, he's the leading receiver. If you get him the football in space, if you're able to run some QB options, because again, Iamaleava is going to be effective as a runner if UCLA intends to use him that way. I actually like their backfield a ton. It's just that the offensive line is terrible. Anthony Woods and Javian Thomas are an effective dynamic duo. But when the blocking's inconsistent and you're in losing game scripts, we haven't seen a lot from Woods and Thomas. So maybe some running back screens can help. Maybe you motion them out and swing passes and just get them into the flat. And Penn State doesn't have any of that on tape. So you don't know if are they going to run two running back backfields? Are they going to have Iamaleava? Are they going to have guys in motion? Is it going to look somewhat similar to an effective Andy Kotelnicki offense, but UCLA's version of that? Potentially. Hey, and Iamaleava's played a lot of football, so he's not necessarily prone to the turnover. If I'm Penn State, I'm paying attention to the quick game. I'm pressing the line of scrimmage. I trust Penn State's defensive backs across the board. Stack them in the box. Jim Knowles knows this. He's not going to play all this back off coverage, okay? He knows that they're going to have to go quick, so you put A.J. Harris up on the line of scrimmage. You get the safeties down in the box, and you dare them to throw it deep and use that play action to try to beat your defense over the top. UCLA's defense, to point it out again, they gave up 286 rushing yards to Utah, 298 to New Mexico. 298 to New Mexico. Ouch. 199 to Northwestern. Again, this is Penn State should win time of possession, the explosive play battle, that kind of thing. If I'm UCLA, I'm stacking the box, but then this is where Andy Kotelnicki's offense is supposed to be effective. When you sell out for one, you sell out for the ground game because Kaytron Allen and Nicholas Singleton just keep breaking off, 5, 10, 15-yard plays, and then you bring extra defenders down in the box, and then that's where Devontae Ross is supposed to hurt you. That's where Trevor Pena on a play-action fake is right across the middle, wide open. Also, this is a defense that doesn't force turnovers. They don't have any interceptions. So Drew Allar should honestly feel a lot more confident about taking risks and throwing the football in. Don't just throw it into triple coverage blindly, but I'm saying if you have those one-on-one matchups, trust that your receiver is going to come down with it because the secondary's not. And I think that's a big point of emphasis for Allar, is just finding that comfortability was saying, I trust my receiver to get open. Because I think Allar, one of the biggest criticisms that I would put on him is that he moves off of his reads too quickly. I think he's good at going through his progressions, but sometimes he'll leave. There's my first read, not open in that split second. Let me go to the next guy. And there were some plays against Oregon where it's, if you just waited a little longer, you might have had that. So if Allar can do that, trust that his receivers are going to get open, give them the time, trust your offensive line is going to protect you. It's important that you got to win up front, right? But UCLA's defense, they don't force turnovers. They don't get after the quarterback. Allar shouldn't have any confidence issues in this game. So is it going to translate on the scoreboard? Because like I said, after pointing out everything that I pointed out here, it is inexcusable if they don't dominate this UCLA team. So let's make our score predictions. Coming up next here on Locked On Nittany Lions. Today's episode is brought to you by Peloton. Peloton is shaping the future of fitness with the brand new Peloton Cross Training Tread Plus, powered by Peloton IQ. It's their most advanced equipment yet, designed to give you real-time guidance and endless ways to move. Whether you're running, lifting, or cross-training with your favorite instructors, this is training reimagined. Peloton is built for breakthroughs with tools that help you plan, stay motivated, and reach peak performance. You'll love how the Peloton IQ system offers real-time strength coaching. It actually tracks your reps, suggests the right weights, and corrects your form, making every rep safer and smarter. The swivel screen is a game changer. You can go from running on the Tread Plus to strength training without missing a beat. And the personalized class recommendations keep you engaged. You get workouts tailored to your vibe and energy level each week. So let yourself run, let yourself lift, flex, and push forward. Explore the new Peloton Cross Training Tread Plus today at onepeloton.com. That is onepeloton.com. At the end of the day, this still is a Division I football team, Power 4. They're in the Big Ten. So I think that UCLA would beat Villanova. Well, right? Maybe? No, they would beat Villanova. They'd beat FIU. I know they lost to New Mexico. I know they lost to UNLV. Hey, that's a Dan Mullen-led team, and that's a team that's built through the transfer portal. So that's not a terrible UNLV team, but it is surprising when this team's in the Big Ten, right? So Penn State should be able to dominate, correct? I say 35-10, and I'm going to still hold that prediction. If you saw the crossover episode with Zach from Locked On UCLA and myself, I said 35-10. Now, I don't remember his score prediction quite off the top of my head, but I think it was somewhere in the neighborhood of 49-7. He thinks that Penn State's offense is really going to get it going in this game. And hey, I hope that's the case. But when it's a cross-country trip, I do think of the other aspects that are lingering here. Penn State in the past has struggled with that follow-up game. When they lose to a Michigan, when they lose to an Ohio State, that big game, the one that they have circled on the schedule, that follow-up game is typically not clean. Remember the Indiana game from a couple seasons back where Penn State went wire to wire with a Tom Allen-led Hoosiers team? I'm not saying that's going to be this game 2.0. However, if Penn State's, like I said, I will allow them a grace period. If they are not sharp in the first 7.5 minutes of the first quarter, fine, so be it. Jet lag, lag from the Oregon game, right? That's tough. That's tough. You go to a double overtime thriller and you lose on a game-ending interception from Drew Allar. That is tough. And this is a game where you go from the whiteout to, is anybody going to show up for the blue out? Are there enough people to show up for this game? UCLA's attendance is bad. That just makes it a low-energy game. But I do expect Penn State to play with somewhat of a chip on their shoulder once they get settled in. Okay, and in this matchup, Penn State's just so much better. They just have so much more talent. They're not changing coaches and coordinators left and right. Okay. So UCLA, I think could this be a shutout? Absolutely. But I think UCLA does have a little bit of an element of surprise where none of this, Jerry Neuheiser's offense is not on tape. It's going to look different. Iamaleava has played enough college football to where he can be somewhat capable on a week-by-week basis, even if you give him a blank. Let's just go play backyard football. That's how I look at this. UCLA is essentially playing a backyard football game, and Penn State's treating this as a business trip to get right. So Kaytron Allen, let's go through some stats here. But the expectation for me is a slow, sluggish portion of the first quarter. You get settled in the second quarter. You're leading, 20 to nothing or 20-3 at half, something like that, or 21-3 because my score prediction is 35-10. And then you have to phase the starters out because I want Penn State to get the backup receivers. We haven't seen the backup receivers at all. That was pointed out recently how everybody talks about Tony Rojas and Amari Campbell playing a ton of snaps because the linebackers coming into question. But the wide receivers, Ross, Pena, and Hudson, have played a ton, and we haven't seen Liam Clifford. We haven't seen Kobe Howard. We haven't seen Tyser Denmark. Why is that? This is a game to get those players in. This is a game to get some offensive linemen some reps, additional reps. Because there's the 7 starters, but we don't really know much about the backups here. If Penn State has its starters deep into the fourth quarter, that's concerning. And we'll address it accordingly in a post-game show. Allar has to be efficient. It is, like I said, I'll use the word inexcusable again. If he has an interception, okay, so be it. I do want him to take some of those chances on those throws. Go over 200 yards. He's probably gonna be a little passive in the ground game. I don't think Andy Kotelnicki is going to use him to run the football because it's not a necessity. It's different when you have Bo Prabula and you have the additional insurance. I know that Ethan Grunkemeyer is going to be a capable quarterback in the future, but it's not the same when, Bo Prabula is starter-esque at that time when he's at Penn State. And you can say, all right, we can run Drew Allar a little more because we have that luxury with Prabula. You also use Prabula as a runner. So Allar as a runner in this game, not expecting a whole lot. But kind of like the Nevada game, go for 200. Complete 20 of 25 passes. If you have touchdown passes, so be it. Again, I think the ball is going to be fed to Kaytron Allen and Nicholas Singleton. Allen should get a bulk of the carries. Okay, he should be the designated RB1. I do agree with that. I don't think that Singleton should be benched, though. But instead of it being a 50-50 timeshare, you should start to lean and say, okay, Allen's going to get 60% of the carries. And it might not seem like a lot. I do think Singleton should be used as a pass catcher, actually, in a hybrid sort of role. So get Singleton the football out of the backfield. Motion him into the slot and put him on a linebacker. That is a mismatch every single time because of his speed. So Allen, I am expecting 20 carries from him. Maybe Singleton gets 15. And then hopefully, I would like to see both running backs go over 100 yards, but that's a little tougher for me to predict here in this situation. Allen, if he gets 20 carries, should get 100 yards. Singleton, I'm still it's tentative. It's a wait and see type of situation with him because I want him to return to his form, but it's not going to be all corrected in 1 week. As far as Penn State's defense goes, I say the defensive ends are going to be able to wreak havoc here. But if they don't come away with tons of sacks, because Jim Knowles does not blitz a lot. If Penn State's defense doesn't have a bunch of sacks in this game, they should have pressures. But if UCLA is going to focus on getting the football out quickly, then it's going to be tough to get home. If Iamaleava's passing clock is 2 seconds, 1.5, just get the football and get it to your receiver. But I also am expecting Penn State to, if that's the case, press the line of scrimmage, force some turnovers. So if Penn State's defense doesn't come away with at least 2 turnovers, then that comes into question. Iamaleava, if Penn State's going to be leading, probably is going to throw a ton. So he'll go over 200 yards. He'll probably have 30 or 40 attempts, depending if UCLA, if it ends up getting into that script. I'm not expecting Penn State to give up a lot of yards on the ground. But they're going to find ways to manufacture some yards here because it is a new look offense. So for Penn State, get right. Get the starters in. Get them out of the game. Get the backups in. I highlighted players like Chaz Coleman, Kobe Howard. This is an opportunity for some of the freshmen. Hey, Darius Dixon is out in California. That's where he's from. I'd like to see Darius Dixon get his first career interception. Let's throw that out here at the end of the show. So it's a pretty straightforward assignment for Penn State. You can't really afford to mess around with UCLA. Take the lead, get your starters out later in the third quarter, and then get the backup some valuable time. And you can do the same thing going into Northwestern as well, because then you got Iowa, and then you got Ohio State after that. That's going to do it for this edition of Locked On Nittany Lions. Hey, friendly reminder to let me know your thoughts down in the comments section. Give me your score prediction and what you're expecting from this Penn State team. Thank you so much to each and every one of you for checking out this episode. If you're not an everydayer, become one. Subscribe to the YouTube channel and wherever you get your podcasts for the latest conversations around your favorite Penn State sports teams.